Hello, and welcome to the podcast Myths and Stuff, which, by the way, I know is not the most creative title, but oh well. I can't think of anything better, and I've always sucked with coming up with titles for my writing, so Myths and Stuff it is. Here on this podcast, I, Liesel, will be telling you, listener, about Greek and Roman mythology. I am a huge nerd about this kind of stuff and cannot wait to tell you all the weird, cool, and unfortunately sexist stories, because it's ancient Greece and Rome. To be a woman during this time really, really sucked. We will be starting off at the beginning with Gaia, Uranus, and their children, because of course. So without further ado, welcome to Myths and Stuff, the beginning. It all started with Gaia, the goddess of the earth, Mother Earth. Gaia was born in darkness so long ago that no one really knows for sure how or when she was created. One day, she just was. Then came her son, which she had all on her own, Uranus. Uranus was the personification of the heavens, the sky up above Gaia. Gaia and Uranus fell in love. Because incest in Greek mythology was just all too common. It was really gross, and yeah. And together, they had many children. First of their offspring were the Titans. There were 12 in total, 6 Titans and their 6 sister Titanesses, which the Titans took for their wives, because again, incest. Gaia and Uranus both loved the Titans. They were tall, strong, godlike beings. Next of their children were the Cyclopses. Together they had 3 named Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, which I'm not entirely sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think I am. The Cyclopses were unique in that instead of 2 eyes, they had one in the middle of their forehead. They weren't very attractive, but they were strong and amazing blacksmiths. They even go on to create Zeus's thunderbolt, which we will talk about later. Despite their handiness, Uranus hated the Cyclopses because they were ugly, so he cast them down to Tartarus, the deepest level of the underworld. Last came the Hecaton Kyries, 3 sons, all with 100 arms and 50 heads. Uranus was again disgusted with his children, and he cast them down to Tartarus along with the Cyclopses. When Gaia found out that her children had been exiled to the underworld, she was horrified and distraught. I mean, they were her kids, so she had every single right to be. She made a sickle out of the hardest flint she could find. For clarification, a sickle is basically what the Grim Reaper carries, but smaller and with a shorter handle. And she presented it to her sons, the Titans. She asked them to take the weapon, kill their father, and free their brothers, the Cyclopses and the Hecaton Kyries, from Tartarus. 5 of the 6 Titan brothers fell back, for they were too scared to face their father. Only one stepped forward and took up the challenge, the youngest, but the strongest, Kronos. Kronos created a plan. While Uranus went to go visit Gaia, he hid in a nearby bush and ambushed Uranus, removing a certain body part. That body part fell into the sea, and from it, Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and sex, was born. The blood from the wound spilled out across the earth, and from it the Gigantes, Irenaeus, and Malei were born. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those correctly. I think I am. I googled it, but I can't be for sure. We will most likely delve into these creatures later, but not right now because quite honestly, they don't contribute much, if anything, to the story. After his misfortune, Uranus fled from his children and Gaia, giving up his powers. And despite Gaia's wishes, Kronos never ends up saving his brothers, the Cyclopses and Hecaton Kyries, from Tartarus. He keeps them imprisoned in the underworld. After Uranus fled, Kronos and his wife, and or sister, depending on who you ask, Rhea, became the king and the queen of the universe. Their time ruling became known as the Golden Age, for nothing bad like murder or theft had been created yet. But Gaia was still angry at Kronos for not releasing her other children from Tartarus, because obviously she was. But she also knew of a prophecy that one day Kronos was destined to be overthrown by one of his own kids. So she waited. But Kronos, too, knew of this prophecy, so he took the completely irrational route of eating each and every one of his kids as soon as they were born. Yeah, because eating your newly born children is a fantastic idea to avoid this prophecy instead of, not having kids. But anyway, of course, Rhea was not too happy with this, and after five of her children were quite literally eaten, she went to Gaia for assistance, and together they devised a plan. When Rhea's sixth son was born, she hid him away in a cave on the island of Crete, and gave Kronos a rock wrapped in a blanket in his place. Kronos ate the rock and, shockingly, didn't realize it was a rock and assumed it was his kid. I mean, I think you'd know if you ate a rock and not a child, but whatever, I've never eaten either, so what do I know? On the island of Crete, depending on what version you have read, Rhea's child, the one and only Zeus, was raised by a number of different things, including, but not limited to, a goat named Amalthea, a nymph called Adamanthea, and, in one telling, by his grandmother, on both sides, Gaia. Regardless of whatever version of the story you have heard, Zeus grows up strong and healthy and chooses Metis, a Titan's daughter, for his wife. And yes, she is his cousin. Once Zeus is strong enough, Gaia gives him what is called an emetic, which is basically something that makes you throw up, which then Zeus or Metis, depending on the version of the story, gives to Kronos. Kronos then basically vomits up all of his eating children as fully grown gods, which makes perfect sense. The order in which Kronos threw up his kids were in reverse order from what he swallowed them in, with the rock coming first, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and, lastly, Hestia. Hestia? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. After his siblings were released from Kronos' stomach, Zeus freed the Cyclopses and the Hecatonchires from Tartarus. As a thank you, the Cyclops forged Zeus his famous lightning bolt, along with Hades' helm of darkness that can turn the wearer invisible, and Poseidon's trident. Zeus, his siblings, the Cyclopses, and the Hecatonchires then go on to start a war called the Titanomachy against Kronos and his fellow Titans. The only Titans that did not join their siblings in the war were Prometheus and Epithymatheus, which I think I'm saying correctly, who remained neutral, and Themis, who joined Zeus's side. I would also like to add that some sources say that Prometheus joined Zeus instead of saying neutral, but again, different versions of the same story where it doesn't really make that big of a difference either way. Point is, Prometheus did not join the Titan side. The war lasts 10 years, just like another very famous war in Greek mythology, and ends with Kronos being overthrown by Zeus and the Titans being imprisoned in Tartarus, with the Hecatonchires standing guard. The one Titan that escapes this fate is Atlas, who is tasked with holding the literal sky on his shoulders. And obviously the Titans who did not aid the other Titans in the Titanomachy didn't get thrown in Tartarus. Stories differ when talking about what actually happens to Kronos after he was overthrown, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll go with the story that he, as well, was thrown into Tartarus along with his siblings. After the Titanomachy, Gaia was angry at Zeus for putting her kids, the Titans, in Tartarus, so she created two monsters, Typhon and Echidna. Typhon had 100 dragon heads, and Echidna was half woman, half snake, and was Typhon's mate. Typhon was very big and mighty, and he and Zeus fought for control of the universe. But of course, Zeus being Zeus, won with his lightning bolt. Again, there are a few versions of how exactly Zeus defeated Typhon, but the main two are that Typhon was thrown into Tartarus, or, my personal favorite, that Typhon was thrown under Mount Etna, which is a volcano. Get it? Like he's the reason it spews lava? I don't know. I just think that's a cool detail. Anyway, from what I could find, Echidna either does not partake in this fight, or she flees, escaping harm. Either way, she hides in a cave, protecting her and Typhon's children that they had together. Their children included Orthrus, a two-headed dog, Cerberus, a three-headed dog who guards the gates of the underworld, the Hydra, a serpent-like being with 9 heads, and if you chop one off, 2 more grow back. You may recognize the Hydra from the fantastic Disney movie Hercules. The Chimera, part lion, goat, and snake. She also breathes fire, which is just so cool. The Sphinx, which has the body of a winged lion and a woman. And lastly, the Nemean lion, which basically has really strong fur that no weapon can pierce. Okay, so now the world is basically at peace. All threats are locked away in Tartarus. So, the gods start to try to establish order. They do this by dividing the different quote-unquote domains of the earth between the three brothers, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon. The women don't get anything. That would be ridiculous in ancient Greek times. So again, considering what story you've read, there are multiple ways the brothers decide who gets what domain. One says they draw straws, another says they do it where the oldest gets top pick and the youngest gets the last. Typical sibling behavior. But of course, when they say the oldest, they mean the order they were thrown up in, so despite Hades technically being the oldest, he's the youngest in the scenario. Whatever version you choose to believe, the end result is always the same. Zeus ends up getting the heavens, lightning, god of the sky. Poseidon gets god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses for some reason. And lastly, Hades gets the underworld, where everyone goes once they die. He also gets all the riches found underneath the ground, so not a horrible deal, to be honest. Despite them splitting everything up evenly, Zeus is still the king of the gods. He saved everyone from spending an eternity in their father's stomach. They then create their home on Mount Olympus, where most of the gods live. The main exception is Hades, who lives in the underworld. And that, everyone, brings the very first episode of Myths and Stuff to an end. I really, really, really hope you enjoyed it. I worked a lot on the script and just had the best time writing it, really. If there's anything I missed, got incorrect, or could just do better at writing, recording, editing, literally anything, please let me know. It would mean the world to me to hear your feedback, and it would make your listening experience that much better. I have a TikTok, Myths and Stuff, which you can reach me. Also, the program that I'm doing this on says that I can, set up this thing where you can input your feedback to me. I'm not really sure how it works, but I'll see if I can set it up. We'll see. For the next few episodes, I think that I'm going to do a breakdown on each god and the creation/stages of people. I'm so excited for this. I've had an absolute blast doing this. It's really hot where I live, and I'm recording under a blanket because that's what all the podcast people say to do because it blocks noise, but it's really, really hot where I am. And it's just, ugh. Also, listening back on myself, I have a really cracky voice. I don't think I sound like that in real life, but I'm also recording on my phone, so maybe it's that, or maybe I just don't know what I sound like. But yeah. I hope again you enjoyed this week's episode of Myths and Stuff, and I will hopefully see you next week. Thank you.